Hello, everybody, and welcome into my latest live broadcast. It's Wednesday, the 16th of August, 2023. And of course, my name is CareyHolzman, and thanks you guys for tuning in. Yesterday was an interesting show, wasn't it? We were evaluating a flash drive from a company that's new to us called MOVESPEED. And, well, trying to make this full, complete sort of picture of storage and price and performance and capacity. There were a couple more tests I wanted to show and run while we were live when we had an unexpected glitch that caused the stream to go down. And that turned out to be a bad RAM module here in the streaming computer that just went out. And that gave me an opportunity to break out my little backup streaming unit, which worked exactly as designed if I had prepared it. It was about 75% of the way prepared. So I will make some time to, because it's still not 100% prepared. I need to really get that prepared and then put it away. So if that ever happens again, I'm ready with my backup. I have backups. This is why. Now, once the glitch occurred, then it all became about me trying to get back to the stream and then trying to let everybody know what was going on. And then all the subject of that video was left behind. And I want to pick up and we'll kind of do a too long didn't read, a TLDR from yesterday, pick it up today, start from scratch essentially, but with less detail. I don't want to repeat everything I did yesterday. And I also will take the time to review these M.2 drives that MOVESPEED has sent us as well. So it's all going to be all about storage today. And if you have questions in that regard, please ask in the chat room. We love to see participation in the chat room from friendly people. You just have to be friendly. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to be good looking. Look at me. See? Proof. You don't have to be either one of those things. Just be nice. And between myself and other community members, I'm sure you'll find not only your question being offered an answer at least once, but also you might make a few new friends online in the process. I would hope so. I'd love to see this community grow with more like-minded individuals. I just received an announcement that YouTube is supposed to be allowing AV1 uploading. Now, that means hopefully they'll have an update to OBS, and that will enable me to encode via AV1, which means my bitrate won't have to be so high. That means my bandwidth won't have to be so much, and that should help us with our connections. Now, lately it's been pretty good, knock on wood. We are in the middle of our storm season here in Phoenix. August is the worst month to be in Phoenix. It's hot, it's humid, it's miserable. We have 2 more days of 110 plus degree Fahrenheit weather. Then it should start to cool down as storms, or what we call the monsoon, start to roll in, and these are intense storms. The worst time to be broadcasting because they're electrical storms and they'll take out power, they'll take out internet connection, and it can be down for a couple of hours when it happens. So in the desert, it doesn't rain very often, but when it rains, it quite often pours. Now, yesterday, there did seem to be some issue with the audio when we brought the machine back up. And it seems that when I changed the camera, so I used to have the audio going through a Panasonic camcorder. And I would be on the Canon camcorder as the main camera, Panasonic camera is the secondary. The picture quality on the Panasonic was terrible, but the audio quality on the Canon was not good. So I was using the audio on the Panasonic and using the video on the Canon. And eventually, with the graciousness of folks like Rob Foster and Peter Laycock, of course, we were able to acquire 2 new Sony 4K cameras. Now, what's disappointing are these cameras are from 2017, but Sony hasn't updated them. They're still selling for the same price today that they sold for when they were new and, well, introduced in 2017. They're a $2,800 camera plus sales tax. But as you can see from the video quality and hear from the audio quality, things are much better. So we've got a backup of 2. So if something happens with this one, we go to the other one. I've got the microphones, the audio, everything's now going through this one main camera. I also have an NVIDIA graphics card using NVIDIA broadcast software. And it never worked with the Panasonic for some reason. And I forgot it was running. So when I went back to the Sony, then the NVIDIA broadcast was starting, I believe what was happening is it was starting to suppress, they have a noise suppression, but I have noise suppression turned on OBS. And I think the NVIDIA software now says, oh, I see your audio source. I couldn't see it before. And it started suppressing that automatically. And then I was suppressing it again in OBS. Oops. So I've corrected that. I hope the audio sounds good to you guys. Hopefully it shouldn't cut out. I experimented using only the NVIDIA broadcast suppression and not the OBS, and it crackles. So something's going on there. Maybe there's a newer version than what I have of the broadcast software, but it never worked for me before. So it's not like I got accustomed to using it. I have been accustomed to using OBS's noise suppression system, and that seems to be working really well for us. As long as I leave things alone and don't change anything, we should be okay. Now, of course, I can't help what happened yesterday. That just happens. It's ironic or coincidental that I'm talking about how silicon, the stuff the computer chips are made from and the circuit boards, the substrate they're made from, that stuff will last 70 years. The reason why it'll fail will be because of a power spike. It'll be, a power surge. Spill something on it, it drops, you dropped it, or you dropped something onto it, or generally some form of abuse. You've overclocked it, you've overvolted it, you will cause its death. If you leave it alone and run it the way the engineers intend it to run, it'll last far longer than you'll find any usefulness of it. And so that's just the overall average. That's not to say every single electronic component follows these rules. It is to say, if you look at the average of components that fail and components that don't fail, the vast majority of modern electronics will need about 70 years to fail. And it kind of depends what we're talking about. If it's a battery, anything that's got a battery in it, the battery's going to fail within 5 years, typically. Again, these are all just averages. And quality control's gotten much, much better. Quality of components has gotten better over the years. So you're more likely going to replace a computer because it no longer meets your needs before you're going to have to either repair it or replace it because of failure. That's not to say you won't have to, but statistically speaking, you're probably looking at a less than 10% chance of having a failure on a computer that necessitates replacement. Now, what happened yesterday was kind of a weird thing. It appears that, and I'm guessing, I think we had a little brownout, but I don't know for sure. What I do know is one of the 4 memory modules in there had failed. And once that bad memory module was pulled, the system booted up just fine. So I had reset the BIOS. I've gone back in and turned XMP back on because that's 3200 speed RAM. And since the RAM is sold in pairs, it has to be returned in pairs. So I've created an RMA request at Gskill, and I just have a spare kit of RAM. And somebody mentioned, us folks at home, we don't have all these spare parts. So how are we supposed to do our own repairs? You're not. No one ever said you were supposed to do your own repairs. That you got it in your head that that's what you want to do. There's certain things that you can do because of your physical and mental capabilities. And there's certain things you can do because of the equipment or tools that you have. So, well, anybody can have the skill to change out the RAM or to determine what's wrong. You may not have the tools and equipment needed to do that quickly. And so not every problem should be fixed by a home user, but it's up to the home user, each individual home user, or small business owner for that matter, to decide how far they want to take it before they call in a professional. Generally speaking, the professional's going to get it done faster than you are. And if you're not quite sure where to begin and you don't have parts to test with, probably cheaper. So each individual person has to decide where that line is. But in no way would I ever imply that anybody could easily do this unless you have the tools and the equipment. It's just like a lot of other things in life. Trying to take an engine out of a car is pretty simple. Taking it out is pretty easy, as long as you have the right tools to do it, or it can be very, very difficult. So having the tools, knowing how to use the tools, the investment into the tools, the investment into spare parts, the time it's going to take you, might be better off taking it to a professional if you want it done faster and cheaper. But again, I leave that to each of you. My goal here is to simply give you the information so that you know the right way for you to proceed, and for nobody else but you. But no, I would never imply that everybody can easily diagnose all their own computer problems. And I don't know why somebody would think that. I don't know where they got that from. They just got that idea in their head and thought for some reason I was suggesting that everybody should have spare parts and everybody should be a computer shop. I never said that, so kind of leaves me puzzled. But this comes along with the territory with what I do. Sometimes people only listen to half of what I say. Sometimes they don't listen to that much. So I will address it in the hopes that I'm snuffing it out and preventing more of it. But I've not been successful in that endeavor in the past. Thank you to Paul O'Brien, who sent an Amazon gift card prior to the show starting. And Alan Lindos with an Amazon gift card of $7.77. Thank you, Alan. I want to give a shout out, say hello to a good friend of the channel, Bill Leatherland. Bill watches us in the UK, and Bill's been watching for years. He's been a generous supporter, and he just emailed me today. I haven't talked to him in a couple months, and he's struggling a little bit with some health concerns. We just want you to know that we're thinking of you, man. I hope you're watching, and I hope maybe at the very least I can keep you distracted for a little while. It's always good to hear from you, my friend. And of course, our friend Peter Laycock, a super thank you and shout out to Peter, as well as a gentleman yesterday, Rob Foster, and another gentleman the day before. My mind just went blank. Isn't that terrible? You'd think I'd remember somebody's name that was so kind to me. Jesse Kirk. It came to me. I didn't see it, actually. It came to me. I don't believe. Anyway, Jesse Kirk. So, and many more, many others of you in the community. I can't name all of you, but those were some very generous contributions, very thoughtful messages that have been sent. And those individuals specifically, a hug. Let's just call it that. That's hug-worthy levels of support. Thank you. All my friends in blue, thanks you guys for being a part of this community. And if you're not in blue, well, all you have to do is be a regular in our chat room. And as I start to recognize your name as a friendly and supportive person that's active in our chat room, I will turn you blue. It doesn't cost you anything. William Gale says hello from Scotland. Oystein's joining us all the way from Norway. Marvin Jameson. Hey, there's Marvin. Welcome in, Marvin. Always good to see our friend Marvin in the chat room. Stan Aristoff with £1.99 in Super Chat. And Rick Lakes joining us from Minnesota with a $10 Super Chat. Thank you, Stan Aristoff, and thank you to Rick Lakes. Dan Nilsson says hello from Sweden. We are live around the world. William Dawson saying hello from Florida. And Mark Gossman from Fresno, California. Pete Unwin saying hello. There's Douglas Burchell. Jason Wyrick. Pete Tracker 34 said the audio is much better over there. Right on. Good to get some confirmation on that. Played with it a little bit last night. I still may turn on HDR mode just to see if it makes a difference in the depth of the colors, but I don't think it's going to because we don't have a lot of contrasting brightness and dark. But I still want to know, so I'll play with that later. Yesterday, we were talking about a flash drive from the folks over at MOVESPEED. Oh, Kevin Crowley with a $9.99 Super Chat says, Happy Wednesday, Carey and chat from Connecticut. Thank you, Kevin. Now, yesterday we were talking about this flash drive from a company called MOVESPEED. And I went through, just as a reminder, or for those of you who missed the video yesterday, using a test called H2 test W on this. And that writes this to complete capacity. So you want to start with a blank drive, just a formatted clean drive. And it'll give you the average megabytes per second speed as the drive heats up, continues to copy data. A lot of these flash drives and a lot of external drives that are solid state will start out fast. And if you're only copying a few hundred megs, it may appear to be lickety split. But when you're copying a few hundred gigs, things start to slow down, and they can slow down beyond the speed of a mechanical drive. Where a mechanical drive will start out slow, it doesn't get any slower and it doesn't get any faster. So if I was only copying a couple hundred megs to a mechanical drive, it would take a bit longer than copying a couple hundred megs to a solid state drive. But if I'm going to copy 500 gigs to this 512 gig solid state drive, 500 gigs to a mechanical USB drive, then this will initially launch like a rabbit while the hard drive moves like a tortoise. And as this heats up, it starts to slow down, but the mechanical drive never slows down. It maintains the same pace throughout the entire write cycle. So eventually, the tortoise outpaces the hare, and the tortoise wins, and it wins by a long time. Like by the time this is done, hard drive may have been finished over an hour, just to give you an example, but not precisely. So the question is, when you're buying a flash drive, what is it that you're looking for? Are you looking for capacity? Are you looking for a solid built case? Are you looking for something that doesn't have a removable cap that you're going to lose? Are you looking for something that has fast reads and fast writes, or do you just care about fast reads? Are you looking for something within a certain budget? So what you're going to get is going to be directly related to how much you're going to pay, and that's pretty much true in this industry, regardless of what we're talking about. If somebody wants to know, what is the best anything? What's the best video card? What's the best case? What's the best power supply? What's the best flash drive? Only you can answer that question, which is essentially, how much do you have to spend? The maximum amount that you have to spend is the best one that you can have. It's really that simple. It's pretty rare in this industry where you're going to pay more and get less. It does happen with, there are always exceptions, but generally speaking, it's safe to say. You don't have to wonder which video card is better. You don't have to wonder which M.2 drive is better. All you have to do is look at the price, look at the capacity, look at the warranty, and determine what you can afford. And if what you can afford, the best you can afford is ultimately the best product, whatever it is, for you. There's no point in, so there's a lot of talk about benchmarks and things lately, but the bottom line is, look, if it's newer, it's probably faster. It's also probably more expensive. So to benchmark it against the previous generation is kind of dumb. It's like, well, what did you think was going to happen? Now, obviously, there's different tiers of products. So when we're looking at graphics cards, and you're looking at, say, a 4060 versus a 3060 versus a 2060 versus a 1060, do you really need the benchmarks to know which one of those is faster? Do you really have to wonder which one is more expensive? And I just want you to use logic. Let's say I am a manufacturer of something and it's really, really super fast. Why would I sell it for less? What incentive would there be for me? If the product is a great performer, then I'm going to get every penny out of that in order to sustain my business. So if you want to know what's the best thing, which one is the newest and most expensive, that one is the best one. That one's going to outperform everybody else 99 times out of 100. All these benchmarks you watch and all these little reviews, and it's all silliness. In my opinion, it's silly because it's obvious what the answer is going to be. There are sometimes exceptions. However, most of the time, it's pretty accurate just to look at the price and look at how new the product is. And you can determine from that alone if that product is going, essentially what that performance is going to be on the product. What you can't tell through benchmarks is what kind of customer support you're going to get, or if you're going to need any. And that's really what can make or break an experience for a customer. No company makes a product that never fails. Every products fail for a number of reasons. Customers mishandle and abuse the products. The shippers can drop kick the box to your door, or the warehouse handlers might drive a forklift through the box. Manufacturers not at fault for that. Sometimes the manufacturers don't pack their product well enough, and they are at fault for a lot of damage that occurs in distribution. But they pay the price for that, and it's usually something corrected relatively quickly. So when we look at these flash drives, you'll notice there's a wide gamut, a wide range of any capacity that you can think of a flash drive, up to, let's say, a terabyte, where the prices can literally range from $12 to $140 or $200 for the same capacity. So why is it? Is it because one person's just charging 12 times more? Or is it because you're getting 12 times more? I'm here to tell you, you are likely getting 12 times more. But what I can't tell you is whether or not that benefits you, depending on how you plan on using the drive or whatever piece of hardware we're talking about. It may make no difference to you because you don't take advantage of those features. So then for you, it wouldn't be worth paying the extra. But for the person next to you who does use those features, they would be insane to buy the one you're buying. So the one that's best for you and the one that's best for the person standing next to you are completely different for different reasons. There's no what's best for everybody, aside from the theory, the hypothesis, that if we're defining best as the highest performing, we'll just call it highest performing, it's generally going to be based on how much it costs. That's it. But best can mean more than just highest performing. It can mean most upgradability. It could be lightest. It could be longest battery life, best screen quality. It could be best heat management. It could be the quietest. You know what I mean? Like there's so many different variables. And what you as an individual value is uniquely yours and yours alone. But when we talk about, well, what's the highest performing graphics card I can buy in the retail market? Probably the latest and most expensive one. I don't think you really need to watch any videos to know that. But when it comes to flash drives, things get a little bit confusing because they'll make a flash drive that's USB 3.0. It'll say USB 3.0, and then you plug it in, and it's moving data at USB 2.0 speeds. And that's because they've got a USB 3.0 controller on the flash drive, but they're using old, slow NAND memory from generations before. So they're not lying, but they're certainly deceiving when they do that. They, being companies like Micro Center, will sell a 1 terabyte flash drive that's USB 3.0. For you to copy a terabyte of data to that drive for like under $30, $28, it'll take you almost 24 hours before all the data gets written to that. And it is a USB 3 drive. It's just that the RAM doesn't operate at USB 3 speeds. The NAND. The flash memory really is what it is. And so they're not lying. And the honesty is in the price. When you see a 1 terabyte Micro Center flash drive for $28, and you see a SanDisk Extreme Pro 1 terabyte for $128, they're both 1 terabyte. They're virtually the same size. But I can assure you, this one is like the flash. Well, that's a bad pun. The flash drive. This thing is rocket ship fast, where that Micro Center drive might be moving data at like 30 megabytes a second. This will move it at 480 megabytes per second. Like if you had a car that could do 30 miles an hour, how would it fare in a race with another car that could do 480 miles an hour? Like it's not even Not even the same stratosphere. You know what I'm saying? So they cost more. Why would SanDisk want to sell that for $28? They'd be foolish to do that. So in general, nobody is really giving out anything at a bargain price that's the highest performing. If it's the highest performing, then that's going to be the most expensive item that they make, that category. And it's just basic business 101. Why wouldn't you? If I could sell a $20 bill for $25, shouldn't I? So then the question gets to be, okay, we talk about capacity, we talk about the quality of how it's made, and we talk about what if you need customer support? What's that going to be like? And the only way we really know with a long-term review is that we use the product on a regular basis until and if we have a failure. So that first NUC I built in April of 2013, it still works today. Nothing's ever been repaired. This system I built in 2019, only yesterday did a part fail. So if I was to review that RAM, I would tell you the RAM's great, never had a problem, highly recommend it. But now something's happened. And now we're going to see what G-Skill's like to work with on the RMA process. And that's the difference between somebody who's making reviews where they get a product across their desk and then it's off to the next thing. They don't know what it's like to live with day to day. They're not counting on it, relying on it the way I am and how it impacts my ability to do my job. And that affects your ability to watch my content if I can't make it because a part failed. It's a domino effect. And until it impacts you personally, it's out of sight, out of mind. So I'm glad it happened so that you can experience it firsthand, so that you can understand the importance when I talk about backups, what's at stake. At the end of the day, it's your responsibility and you have nobody to blame if you didn't make your backups right, if you didn't update them in a long time, or you can't figure out how to restore them. You should already have been prepared. And if you're not, well, then don't be surprised. No, all I want you to do is to know what to expect. So that way, when it happens, you know exactly what to expect, and you won't be so, in a crisis, in a mental crisis. You'll be able to say, oh yeah, I knew that if this day happened, this was what I was going to have to do. I don't want you to figure it out then. I want you to know today what you could expect. Whether you're prepared or you're not prepared, only you know that. But you shouldn't be surprised. Okay. So with this flash drive, the folks over at MOVESPEED, they're out of Hong Kong, I believe, and they're selling through Walmart. They've asked us to share links to Walmart instead of Amazon. And if we look over at Walmart, MOVESPEED has a little storefront on Walmart's website. And let me bring that up on the screen and I'll share it with you. Okay, as you can see here, we've got this flash drive here, but this one's a 256. The one I have is a 512. They also make a 1 terabyte. They've got the 2 terabyte SSD NVMe. They have what appears to be a different 2 terabyte NVMe SSD. Not sure what the differences between these are, but I have a couple of their drives. I think a 1 terabyte and a 2 terabyte. And then I want to show you the results once more of the performance of this NVMe drive. So what I want to do first, this is a SanDisk 512 gig drive. It's $79.99. And this is the drive that's from MOVESPEED. That's the same capacity, 512 gigs. It's less than half the price of the SanDisk. So how does it perform? Well, let's do this. Let me go back over to camera 1. There I am. And let's hook up this little HP mini PC. Now this is a fairly new HP mini PC. It's a 12500T. These sell for, right now, around $800 each. And they go up from there. They even have models that are $1,200. This one, I picked it up used on eBay for $600. And I added my own RAM, I added 32 gigs of RAM. It's like $50. And I added a 2 terabyte Samsung 990, maybe. So all in, I'm about 900. Oh, and I had to buy my own operating system. So all in, it's about $930 with me doing the work for free. So even though it looks just like the ones we give away, see, HP hasn't changed the design much. This is a 6th gen i5. This is a 12th gen i5. Let me get this plugged in and turned on, and we will run these tests live so you can see how long they take to run and you get a real feel for exactly what you're getting for $35. I think it's it's more than fair deal. That's the cliff notes to that. Spoiler alert. But the SanDisk is faster. It's also more than twice as much money. The difference is, unlike the Micro Center drive I mentioned, that 1 terabyte drive, this is way, way faster than that. And also that Micro Center drive at 1 terabyte costs less than this 512 guy. So, isn't that interesting how the worse the drive performs, the cheaper it gets? All right, let me get the keyboard and mouse plugged in here. Yes. And we'll get a monitor plugged in right over here. And we can plug it into the network as well. So we'll plug that in right here. And then let's see, I've given it power. Let's turn this on. So that should, I think that's turning on. And then we'll go over to our HDMI input and see that this is booting into Windows. Let me step around the counter because I think I'm hitting that power button square on. Not quite sure. Let me go back to, oh, there it goes. I'm just too impatient. I'm going to go over to camera 1 again. And what I'll do is I'll just put myself in a corner so you can see me and this computer screen at the same time. Okay, so when I started off, I mentioned I use a product. It's free. You can all download it to test any storage you have. This is particularly important if you're buying storage from a sketchy source. So you bought something off Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, eBay, Etsy. Oh, there's a lot of scam sellers out there. And you might buy a flash drive that says it's a certain size, and you might write a couple bytes to it, write a couple of files, and it works. So you're like, oh, good, it tests out fine. No. They'll take a small capacity memory card or flash drive, and they'll gut it and just take the heart of it out. And they'll put it into an adapter and run wires and hot melt glue it into an enclosure so that from your eye, it looks like any other standard external solid state drive. But in fact, it's just the guts of a cheap flash drive like that Micro Center drive. And then they just run wires. They solder the wires onto it. They use a hot melt glue gun. And then they reprogram the firmware to report that it's 5 terabytes. Well, of course, they don't make a 5 terabyte, but if you don't know that, you might think it's a good deal. But what you're really getting in many cases, like 16 gigs flash drive or 32 gig flash drive or 32 gig memory card that's in a memory card reader that's soldered. It's terrible. And so it says, hey, I'm a terabyte or I'm 10 terabytes or whatever they want it to say, but it's not actually any bigger. I mean, I can tell you I'm 10 feet tall, but I'm not going to be 10 feet tall. I can also tell you I weigh 100 pounds. It doesn't make it so. With storage, because when you look at a flash drive like this one here, this comes in 3 different sizes, 256 gig, 512 gig, and 1 terabyte. So how can you tell the difference when the difference is inside of it? 256 gig, 512 gig, and 512 gig flash drives use the same housing. It's no different than a car. They might sell a Mustang with a 4-cylinder engine, a 6-cylinder engine, or an 8-cylinder engine, or an 8-cylinder turbo supercharged engine, but it's all put into the same car. So from looking at it from the outside, you don't know what engine that has. You can maybe peek around the back and count the number of exhaust pipes coming out the back, but even that, they could put a splitter underneath the car and take a single exhaust and split it into as many as they want, if that's the look they're going for. You could read the badging on the side of the car, but anybody can go buy badges and stick them on the side of their car. That doesn't mean that's what's under the hood. And so since they make so many varieties of that particular model, the same is true with a lot of computer components, such as flash drives and M.2 memory drives. They all look the same to the naked eye for the most part, unless you really know what to look for. So this tool called H2 Test W is a free utility you download. It's in German by default, and you just click a little button to make it English. And it will write data to the reported size of the drive until it's filled. And it'll keep track of how many megabytes per second. It'll start out fast typically, and it'll start getting slower and slower, depending on how expensive the drive is. When it's done, it's going to read the data back and verify that the data is there and hasn't been corrupted. And then it'll time how long that takes to read the data back and the status of the data. So a drive that's been sold from an unscrupulous seller who has manipulated the firmware, as it's trying to write beyond the actual size of the drive. So let's say the actual size of a fraudulent scam drive is 16 gigs, but they're reporting it as a terabyte. As soon as you hit 16 gigs, your writing cycles are going to fail. And it will continue that. H2 Test W will continue that to ensure it's not a bad spot until it reaches the reported size. So when it goes to read it back, that's when you're going to find out that how much data was actually read back. You'll get an idea of how big the flash drive really is, and you probably don't want to use it. It's not trustworthy. Okay, so I'm going to bring this up to the camera here. Let's go full screen real quick. I want to show you what this flash drive looks like up close. First of all, this thing feels like it's made of steel. It's really, really heavy. There's nothing plastic here. It's all metal. And on one end of the flash drive, we have a USB Type-C port, and that's so you can plug it into your phone and back up your phone. On the other end, and you can see on the other side of it, you can see that it's kind of bare on the other side. That's a USB Type-A port, so you can plug that into your computer as normal. They also include a leather pouch that's engraved or etched in with the name MOVESPEED on the back of it. And inside of the leather pouch, they've included a small adapter to convert the USB Type-C on this end to a micro USB on this side. So, oh, sorry, not the USB Type-C. It's to convert the USB Type-A on this side to a micro USB. And that's all included in that $35 price. Now, this little lid part here, this actually kind of clicks into place, and so it doesn't move. The one on this side has just got a magnet. You see that little dot right there? That's a magnet. And when it closes, the magnet grabs it. But if you flip it hard enough, or you keep this in your pocket, it'll open in your pocket. But at least you don't have a cap to lose. So yeah, that's the front. That's the underside. But it is pretty hefty. You'll know if this is in your pocket. It's like having a roll of nickels. It's maybe not quite that heavy, half a roll of nickels. So I'm going to plug this in. I'll plug it into the front over here. And I've already run the H2 Test W because that took several hours to run. And obviously, the bigger the flash drive, the more data it's got to write, the longer it's going to take. Unless you spend a lot of money on a drive that's really, really super fast and is designed for large file transfers. It's going to be bigger than this. It won't be that small. It has to have a larger surface area to dissipate heat. But they do make those at price if that's something you're looking for. So let me go back over here to the desktop. And let's see, full screen so I can read what it says. How would you like to receive software updates from HP? Yeah, this is a brand new computer, so day of the week, Tuesdays. Time. Wow. Okay, well, I guess that's fine. I'll just save that. I usually get my updates manually. Nonetheless, we look at the results of the H2 test W. You'll see that the MOVESPEED drive, this 512 gig drive, shows 488,362 of 488,364 megabytes tested. That's because of the NTFS file system. There's only a difference of 2 bytes there. So it's even though it says warning, it's not so much a warning so much as it's an alert just to let you know. But that's normal and nothing to be concerned about. Now you see our write speed dropped to 39.3 megabytes and our read speed at 238 megabytes. So what happened? Well, the write speed is always going to be slower than the read. This started out writing at over 300 megabytes per second, but as the drive got hotter, it started to slow down. So when we look up here, to fill this drive up to capacity, it took 3 hours and 27 minutes at an average. This is the average speed. To move that much data in that much time means the data moved at an average of 39.3 megabytes per second, but that's not actually what it did. Moving the data very quickly, and as it got hotter, that quickly became a little slower, a little slower, a little slower. When it read the data back, it only took 34 minutes and 16 seconds because the drive doesn't get anywhere near as hot on a read cycle as it does on a write cycle. So it even started reading back higher than 238 megabytes. But to read that much data back in that much time averaged that megabytes per second speed overall. That's how they get to these numbers. So then one of the tests I wanted to run yesterday was, well, how does it do on crystal disk mark? And since the drive has been off and it's nice and it's at room temperature now, we can run crystal disk mark on this drive. Now, a 1 gig test file is probably too big, but we can try it. I'm not really interested in these numbers down here. Let's just do the 2 top tests and we'll select drive. Or drive's not in there. Hold on a second. Where'd drive go? Don't have it plugged in all the way, apparently. Try and plug that back in. I need to step around the counter so I can see the front of the computer, so I can see the port to plug it into. There it is. So that's plugged into type A side. And we can do this test twice. We can flip it around and try it on the type C side as well, just to see if there's a difference. And that may be a difference on the computer itself, not so much a difference on the flash drive. Okay, so I want to do drive D. Restart this for it to see the drive now. Bring this up again. And this is a free program. You can download this at home and see how your drives compare. You'll see I use a portable version of the software, and that means I don't have to install it. Select our D drive. We'll just do the 2 top tests to see what our maximum sequential writes and our maximum sequential reads are. It starts by doing the read speeds first. And you'll see up at the top, it says it's doing test 1 of 5, right up there. And that's no slouch. I mean, that's a far cry from 39, right? Because it said, well, on our read speed, it said 237 or something. And you can see 470 is nothing to shake a stick at. But when the drive heats up, that number will start getting lower and lower and lower. So if you're doing a couple hundred megs at a time of data transfer, it's going to be super fast. You're going to be very happy with this drive. But if you're constantly moving hundreds of gigs, or if you're even going to move 60 gigs, it's going to significantly slow down. Now, look again at their write speeds. They're matching those read speeds right now. at 467.83 megabytes per second. That is impressive for a $35 flash drive. But again, as it heats up, those numbers will start to diminish, and they can diminish to 75% of what you're seeing right now if you run it long enough. Now, as long as the drive is written in bursts, you're not trying to, copy a huge file over to it all at once, then you should be very happy with the performance. Now let's try something else here. Let's go back to camera 1 for a moment. And let me put myself in a corner. Myself right over here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close Crystal Disk Mark. I'm going to eject this flash drive. Now, I don't think it's going to perform any differently, but I'm going to step around and turn the flash drive around. So we're going to grab this side of it, the Type-C side, and we're going to plug it into the Type-C USB right up front here. There we go. Then I will restart Crystal Disk Mark again. And we'll run the 2 top tests one more time and see if the numbers are identical. Josiah Guernsey's been a member for 12 months now. Right on. Thank you, Josiah. Thank you for continuing your membership here. So far, the numbers will never be exactly the same after 2 tests, but if they're within 10, 20, 30 megabytes of each test, that's pretty normal when you're seeing numbers of that size. Utomo with an $8.44 super chat says, keep up the good work. I've enjoyed watching your channel for almost a decade. Right on. Well, thank you. Thank you for supporting the channel. There's our friend Bill Wickens joining us from Vancouver, Washington. Welcome in, Bill. Chris Johnson says hello. Thomas Backenstow says hello. Garfield Rupe, Captain Blinsky, Nick Poverman and Jim KJ3N, Matthew Burden, Ben Laird, Alvin Shaver, Ryan Madonna, Ron Barnish and Lawn Dog, Aaron Gilhelm, and Mark Cresswell. Welcome in. So we get slightly higher numbers, not much to really consider that being anything. But you can see you can use either side of the flash drive equally. So let's close this down again. We'll eject the flash drive. Okay, so that's all this stuff here. 512 gig, leather pouch, the adapter should go to micro USB at that price at Walmart, under $36. And again, they have one that's 256 gig, they have one that's 1 terabyte, priced accordingly. It's pretty good solid value, in my opinion. Now we'll take the SanDisk. This is more than twice the amount of money. This is like $80 for a 512 gig SanDisk Extreme Pro. It's plastic and not metal. It does have a read and write LED indicator, an activity LED. This does not. Pros and cons, pros and cons. This has that USB Type-C, so if you wanted to back up your phone, you could simply just plug it in and back your phone up. This does not. Back and forth, back and forth. All right, so performance, how does this compare? We know it's more than twice the money. We don't get the pouch. We have a different kind of mechanism for extracting and for egress and ingress of the USB port itself. Let me plug this into the front. And let's run the same test on the same computer under the same scenario and see how it compares. And as you can see, I've got the results that I ran on, because again, I ran that H2 Test W software on both of these, and it took several hours to run. How did the SanDisk fare in the H2 Test W? Well, I'm glad you asked. Here's our results for that. It took an hour and 18 minutes to write all the drive to full capacity, which is less than half the time that the move speed took. And then the reading the data back took 30 minutes, averaging 260 megabytes per second, which is darn near the exact same speed as the move speed. So no real improvement on the reads, but a significant improvement on the writes when writing a large amount of data. But what about just a burst like what we just tested? How does the SanDisk compare that way? So if we look, we'll bring up Crystal Disk Mark one more time. 64-bit. Want that on drive D. We run the two tests, and let's see what numbers. We were about 470 on the reads and the writes on the move speed at $35. Now at $80 on the SanDisk Extreme Pro USB flash drive of the same capacity. We are pretty much neck and neck, identical. So which drive is faster depends on how you use it. Think about that. If you're going to copy a lot of smaller files, there'd be no incentive for you to spend twice as much money on the SanDisk Extreme Pro. On the other hand, if you're going to copy 100 gigs at a time, you can save half the amount of time it's going to take you to do that by buying the SanDisk. In some cases, the SanDisk is showing up a little bit slower than the move speed. Look at that. That's actually quite surprising to me. And the move speed is half the price. Now, how will the move speed fare in time? Will it be as robust, as reliable as SanDisk has been? And if I have a problem, will it be as easy to work with and make the process of sending back a bad unit and receiving a replacement as painless as SanDisk does? Well, that's just something we have to wait and see if that opportunity ever arises. Because if it never fails, I'll have no reason to ever send it back. So you can understand that's where these reviews can get a little bit lacking when it comes to living with things day to day. What's the company like to work? So at the end of the day, one could easily compare these two products as being nearly identical, with the SanDisk costing more than twice as much. And someone else might look at it and say, no, that one's half the speed. If you're writing 500 gigs to it, it's going to take you twice as long than if you're writing 500 gigs to the SanDisk. Well, they're not wrong either. So you understand the complexity in the answer depends on the individual who is, how they're weighing value. They might see more value in the savings. Someone else might see more value in the time savings if they're going to move large chunks of data like that. In either case, neither of these drives is really ideal for moving hundreds of gigs of data at one fell swoop. You'd be much better off using a larger solid state drive from SanDisk or any number of manufacturers, Western Digital. And they're physically larger drives, and they will maintain those write speeds throughout the entire cycle. So if you're constantly moving large files, get one of those external SSDs instead of a flash drive. Save a lot of time. At the end of the day, thank me for it, because whatever it's costing you extra for that, it'll easily pay itself back in speed, getting the thing done faster. But for everyday use, for copying files, having something you can keep in your pocket, again, these flash drives, they're not intended to be the only source of your data. You should only put copies of data on flash drives. So you should always have a duplicate copy outside of that flash drive in case you drop the flash drive. You're in a boat, you dropped it in the ocean, it's gone. I don't know, it fell out of your pocket. I think this MOVESPEED flash drive, you could probably run it over with a car. I don't think it's going to injure it. I'm sure I could probably go to the highest high-rise in downtown Phoenix and drop it from the roof and it's not going to harm this. This case is serious. That SanDisk isn't going to live up to that kind of abuse, but neither one of these are made for that. So even though you could do it, I'm not condoning it, and I'm not suggesting you should. But I am saying that's how strongly built this is. And I'm not promising you if you do that, it's not going to break, but it certainly seems to me that it would be very difficult to physically destroy this drive. The only best way I can think of to destroy it would be to have it plugged into a computer and then bend on it and crack the plug. That's probably its Achilles heel. But again, it is not built as a piece of armor. It just happens to feel like that. And it probably does sustain far more abuse than the SanDisk would. But you shouldn't be abusing either of them regardless. Okay, so then the next question is, if MOVESPEED does such a great job, a great price with the flash drive, what are their NVMe drives like? Are they as good? Can we get SanDisk-like performance out of a company we've never heard of before for a fraction of the price? Short answer is yes. Yes, you can. So MOVESPEED has sent us two. I'll tell you what, let's shut this down because I'm done with it for right now. That off. We'll go back to full screen on camera one. MOVESPEED has sent us two NVMe drives to test. And once again, the links for these, they want to direct you to Walmart. That's, for whatever reason, their choice. They are available on Amazon as well, but they are cheaper at Walmart. They've included a stick-on heatsink and a small screwdriver here, which I don't know if one of these drives is supposed to come with this. Not sure. These heat sinks are usually optional, depending on how you're using it. They've sent us a 1 terabyte drive for review, and they've sent us a 2 terabyte drive for review. Now, these are supposed to be Gen 4 and are supposed to achieve read speeds of 7,300 megabytes per second, very similar to the higher-end Western Digital drives that cost a lot more money than these. So I'm trying to think how I can test these. I guess the first thing I need to do is move the little mini PC out of the way. Oh, I think we can use the mini PC. Now when I think about it, I think we can use this for our testing. Wouldn't that be just dandy? Let's open this up. Aha. That's using my noggin. I got to get this drive cage out because underneath the HP has two M.2 slots, and I believe they're both Gen 4. I might have egg on my face if they're Gen 3, or if one of them is Gen 3. But since it's right here and it only takes a second, let me show you the inside of this. Right here is where our M.2 drive is. You see you have a Samsung 990 Pro in there right now. And then we have an empty M.2 drive above it that apparently has some thermal tape stuck down at the bottom. So this should be relatively painless. We'll grab the 1 terabyte drive. And we're not going to use the heatsink. MOVESPEED includes a couple of M.2 screws, not just one. They give you two. Get a little documentation on how to install it. And then the packaging opens like a book. There's indentations to put your fingers and remove the drive. And then I'll just use the spare slot I've got. I'm going to take this tape off. We'll just Oh, I need to take the screw. See, there's already a screw in there, so I don't need the screws they've included, but it's a really nice touch. They've included them. And we're going to pop this bad boy in there. Once I figure out which direction it goes. Let me bring this up to the camera and show you. It's kind of got a neat decal on it. And this decal, this side of it is the side that faces up. That's kind of cool. And in the back side of it, looks like that, which I've already shown you through the window in the box. So let me get this plugged into its slot and we'll secure it down with that screw, and then we can wire this back up, turn it back on, partition and format this, and immediately run a comparison between that Samsung 990 and this drive. And I'm assuming both of these slots are Gen 4. But I'll know based on the numbers. If one is a Gen 4 slot and one is a Gen 3 slot, that'll be really obvious, and that means I'll have to test in a different machine. Okay, so we're just going to figure this out, because this would be really convenient. That's all I have to do. Saves us some time. That's our network cable. We need to give it power. Have to plug the, well, I left the dongle plugged into it. And the power button's like right there. There we go, fan is spinning. Let's go back to the HDMI capture. Not sure why it's taking so long to boot, but hoping I didn't leave an operating system on that drive. I think this is a little confused. I might have accidentally put a bootable drive in there. So I'm going to just wait a second. I'm going to be a little patient here, see if it's going to time out. Default to booting to the Samsung flash drive. I want to say SanDisk flash drive when I mean to say Samsung M.2 drive. Ben Laird with a 10-pound contribution, joining us from Scotland. Thank you, Ben. Alvin Shaver with a $2 super chat. Right on. Thank you, Alvin. And George Schloika with a $10 super chat. Thank you, George. All right. I'm getting a little concerned that by installing the second M.2 drive, which I may not have properly erased, I've confused the computer. Lawn Dog says, Carey, thanks for the tip on the software for testing storage devices. I am at this moment giving it a demo on my 64 gig Kingston Data Traveler drive that you use. I just chose a 64 gig. I don't think I have a Kingston Data Traveler. I think Kingston makes the worst flash drives, right next to Micro Center. They're second worst. So if I used one, I used it for testing, but I don't. When I reach in my drawer for a flash drive, if there's a Kingston one, I move around it. I don't want the Kingston one. Yeah, this doesn't seem like it wants to boot. So here's what I'm going to do. We'll do this a different way. Let me bring up. Let me do two things. One, let me just unplug it, start it up one more time, just to give it one more chance. And then if that doesn't work, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the drive we just plugged in, and I'll run Crystal Diskmark on the included installed Samsung drive. We'll get those numbers. Then we'll shut it down, swap the drives, and I'll quickly throw a copy of Windows on it. See how it compares. Okay, so now it's just now turned back on. In just a minute, we should see, yeah, okay, that's perfect. Now hopefully it'll Yeah, it's loading this time. Good. It saves me to having to do extra work. Alan Lindos contributes $7.77. And Alan says, hi, Carey and chat. I'm 20 minutes late today, so here's my late fee. I will replay the first 20 minutes after this live broadcast. 20 minutes. We started an hour ago. All right, let me go back to full screen for me. Thank you, Alan. Thank you for supporting the channel. Okay, so we'll go back over to the same testing software, Crystal Disk Mark, 64-bit edition. I don't use H2 Test W on hard drives or solid state drives. I only use it on flash drives and flash memory. Okay, so there's the C drive by default, and we'll run all the tests, okay? Because it's for some people, the 4K transfer and IOPS are important to those people. And there could be a difference between the drives in that regard. So for full coverage, we'll run it across the gamut of tests. We're at over 7,000 megabytes per second, so we know that's Gen 4. Londog said the Kingston I chose is a write speed of 200 megabytes per second, and it's living up to that number. They usually do live up to that number initially. So when you start running H2 Test W, when you get about 300 megs into your test, if that, you should start seeing the write speed start to drop. The longer you let that test run, it'll just continue to drop and drop and drop and drop until the test is finished, and then you'll get your final average. See, to me, 200 is too slow. I won't touch anything under 400 these days. And if I can get 2000, I want 2000. Not out of a flash drive, but out of an external solid state drive, like the SanDisk, I forget what they call them. SanDisk and Western Digital make these external SSDs. They are little rocket ships. And as a reminder, make sure you're watching the video in 1080 if your bandwidth will support that. My tablet keeps defaulting me to 144 or 240p resolution when it's set on auto. So I have to go to the advanced part, choose my resolution of 1080p, and then all of a sudden the picture quality is like super vivid and crisp. So this test takes a couple minutes to run, and while we're waiting, if you have any questions, preferably storage related, but any technical questions, I'll do my best right now to look in the chat and answer those questions. And obviously, you're welcome to ask questions at any point in our chat room, even if I haven't gone live yet, because there's other members in the community that would more than likely be super happy to offer you an answer or a suggestion. And they can be very, very helpful. Typically they are, if you give them an opportunity. Community is just members helping members. Corey says, Carey, I just wanted to say you taught me most of the knowledge I know on computers with your years and years of videos. I got super interested and obsessed watching all the live repair videos. Right on, Corey. Yeah, for me, it's fun figuring it out. It's the challenge, determining what the problem is and how to solve it. And very rarely do we see the same problems over and over again. So it keeps it interesting. And if we do see the same problem over and over again, people think you're smart because you're able to identify and correct it so quickly. They don't really consider the fact that you've done it a million times. They just think, wow, look at how smart you are. The fact is, if you did something over and over and over again, get real good at it too, from the eyes of somebody who doesn't know any better. Say, wow, that really knows what he's doing. Of course, after doing this for over 30 years, even if I didn't know what I was doing, I would have picked up something in 30 years, right? I would think so. All right, so we're almost done with the test. You'll see we've got 7138 on our read speed, sequential read speed on the top left, and 6903 on our sequential write speed. That is super fast. It's almost saturating the Gen 4 IO bus on that M.2 socket. I think the most you can hit is 7,400 in a best case scenario, and we're right there. But this is an expensive SanDisk 990 Gen 4 M.2 2 terabyte NVMe. 2 terabytes? I think that's a 2 terabyte. Let me verify that. It's possible I put a 1 terabyte. Let's go over here. No, it's a 2 terabyte. Okay, so there's our numbers. Now, as far as the drive I put into the other M.2 slot, it appears like it's not appearing as an option because it hasn't been partitioned and formatted, which is how it should be. Any new drive. So to do this, we go to, gotta use the right, silly me, I'm over on this keyboard when I need to be on this keyboard. So we go full screen so I can see what I'm doing. Go to, let's close this. Type in disk here, create and format hard drive partitions. It should auto sense that we put a new drive in. Pop up a window that says, hey, you got a drive here that needs to be initialized. That's exactly what it did. It says, hey, you got a drive here, it needs to be initialized. All I got to do is click OK. And then it says, okay, it's a 1 terabyte drive. It's all unallocated. There's no partition. So right click, new simple volume. Next, 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 finish. Boom, we're done. That drive will now appear as a D drive. So if we go to my computer or this PC icon, we have our new MOVESPEED M.2 drive right there. So to test it, got to be partitioned and formatted to run the Crystal Disk Mark test. I'm going to start Crystal Disk Mark again. I'm going to click Mark 64. We're going to do everything exactly the same for fairness and testing. Go. Select drive D. We'll run all tests. And let's see how this compares. Because the next thing you want to look at is the comparison on the price, comparison on your warranty. $69.85, $71.05. Holy cow. Are you impressed yet? Wait until you see the price difference. Does anybody want to tell me the price difference between a 1 terabyte Samsung 990 and the MOVESPEED 1 terabyte, or a 2 terabyte Samsung 990 and a 2 terabyte MOVESPEED? Anybody in the chat want to tell me that price difference? Nick Poverman wants to know if I've ever run the H2 test W on an NVMe drive. I would have no need to, Nick. I've never seen a fraudulent NVMe drive. And as far as speeds go, I don't run into problems with NVMe drives slowing down when writing a lot of data to them. Also, NVMe drives that I use are generally 2 terabytes. And I can imagine that if I were to fill that NVMe drive up with 2 terabytes in one long write sequence, that drive's going to get, it's going to get hot at a level that doesn't replicate normal use, not even close. And I don't feel the results of that test would be useful. So no, I think it would just be needless waste of time and needless waste of write cycles on your NVMe personally. So no, I only use H2 test W on camera memory cards, flash drives. If somebody's selling some kind of an external USB-based storage, maybe, depending on what kind of storage it is. But at the end of the day, it's up to you what you want to do. You certainly can run it on an NVMe drive if you want to. It will run. I wouldn't. So people are shouting numbers with no point of reference. Somebody says $40, someone says $35, and someone says $100. What is that? Is that the price difference between them? Or is that the cost of one or the other, or which models? So when you type in your answer, it would be great if you would preface what you're talking about. So write speeds again at 6430, read speed 7105. And if again, while we're waiting here, I go back over to my window capture. MOVESPEED 1 TB drive. It's the 2 TB. 1 TB drive is $42.99, and the 2 TB drive is $80.98. Now, compared to SanDisk 990, Samsung 990, it's twice the price for the same capacity. So instead of $40 for 1 TB, it's $80. Instead of $80 for 2 TB, it's $156. So nearly half the price in both cases, but nearly the same performance. Now the Samsung says it's got a warranty of, say down here, these are usually a 5-year warranty. MOVESPEED is a 5-year warranty. Okay, let me back now to desktop. There's our final numbers on the 1 TB drive. But keep in mind, a larger solid state drive, if everything else about the solid state drive, same manufacturer, same everything, the only difference is we're looking at the capacity is the only difference. The larger capacity will run faster. Just, that's how solid state memory works. So what I want to do to test this now is shut this down, completely power it off, and then we'll go full screen on camera 1. And I'm going to pull the power plug because I don't want to work on this with the power plugged into it. Grab my glasses so I can see. And we're going to pull the MOVESPEED 1 TB drive out and replace it with the 2 TB drive, partition and format it, and run Crystal Disk Mark on that and see how the numbers compare, because that's a more fair comparison, 2 TB versus 2 TB. 1 TB being half the size isn't going to run as fast as a 2 TB drive with everything else being the same. So for a fair test, things to be as equal as possible. So let me remove the MOVESPEED, put it back in its little case here. It's this way. I will keep those things together. This, I've never even cut the tape on this box yet. So let's open this one up. Same thing, we've got our documentation. We get a couple of M.2 screws. That's a nice touch. And then here's our M.2 drive. Again, same make and model, only difference is that it's a 2 TB instead of a 1 TB. So we'll pop this bad boy in there. Got this little heat shield that's nice on these little HP Mini Elite. This is a G9. Plug power back in. I will find that power button. Oh, There it is. Really recessed. There it goes. Now I can switch over one more time. We'll put myself in the corner here so we can see the HDMI input, which should be booting. I hope. Of course, we're booting off of the Samsung drive in there. So now this time, you know what I'm about to do, right? You should know what's happening. I'm over here and I'm going to type in the word disk, D-I-S-K, C, create and format hard disk partitions, because this is brand new. This M.2 drive we just put in has no partition or format. So when I select that, a window should pop up. It should tell me it's not supposed to happen. That shows a 1 terabyte partition. That is wrong. That's interesting. That came brand new out of the package like that. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to reset the drive by typing in CMD, right click and select run as administrator. Yes. And I'm going to type in disk part as one word. I'm going to type list disk, and it shows disk 1 is a 1 terabyte drive, and disk 0, that's our boot drive. So I know the Samsung drive from the MOVESPEED, but this MOVESPEED drive is supposed to be a 2 terabyte. So somebody may have formatted this incorrectly, or partitioned it incorrectly, I should say. So I'm going to select disk number 1. Does that say 2? Select disk 1. Clean. Now that completely resets the media to how it should have come out of the box. The way we just saw it shouldn't have been looking like that. So now let me go back to type the word disk again. We'll come back over to create and format hard drive partitions, and it should identify we have a new drive. And it does. Perfect. This is what I was expecting it to do the first time. Click OK. It still only shows 1 terabyte. This is supposed to be a 2 terabyte drive, so something's off. Something's not adding up. So the next thing I want to do is shut the computer completely down, because now we have a completely different problem. So shut this down, and we'll go full screen onto camera 1. I'm going to pull power, and I'm going to pull this drive back and remove the M.2 so we can take a closer look. Did somebody put a 2 terabyte sticker on it? Because that won't make it 2 terabytes. Very strange. That's a new one for the books. It clearly says it is 2 terabyte. If I bring this over to you guys, this is quite interesting. We've got our model number, and it shows it's 2 terabyte. When we plug it in, at least to that computer, it's showing that this is 1 terabyte. So the next thing I will do is I'm going to put this screw back. Put this just back in its place. I'm not going to lock it down yet because I still might be getting in here. And let's turn this back on. There we go. And I'm going to grab my Silverstone M.2 USB enclosure. And let's see if it sees it as 2 terabytes. Because it's been partitioned as 1 terabyte, I expect it to come up as 1 terabyte, but when I look at the specs of the drive, it should say it's a 2 terabyte drive. So something funky is happening there. is it a drive problem? Was it mislabeled at the factory? Or is it a controller problem on the HP? I don't know. That computer's still new to me, so not aware that there should be any size limitation in that regard. We'll just plug this in right here. There we go. And then I'm going to switch over to my, well, I guess I just need to minimize camera 1 here, put it in the, so full screen so I can seize. And here, let's go here. Does not see that I plugged a USB drive into it, so let me plug it back in. Got a blue light on the enclosure. Let's go to disk, here, create and format hard disks. What does it see now? Now it's showing me full partition. So let's say new simple volume, next, next, sign, drive letter, next. Okay. So what that suggests to me is there may be some setting in the BIOS of this HP. Now, obviously, I don't want to performance test it in a USB enclosure. So now that I know I've got it partitioned correctly and everything's happy, it does show up as 2 terabytes. Now let me plug it in and see what it says. And barring that, I can go in the BIOS and see if there's anything in there that's restricting that second port to 1 terabyte. So we'll shut this down. Again, I'll go full screen on camera 1. I'm going to pull power here. Plug my Silverstone Raven NVMe and SATA M.2 enclosure. Tool this rubber knob we pull back. Have to use a screwdriver. This piece just slides over. It's great if you're ever trying to do data recovery, or maybe you've got a bunch of these laying around. You can just swap them in the same enclosure one at a time. You have multiple backups without having to buy an enclosure for every single one. All right, my glasses. See, I shouldn't have put that screw back. Now I have to take 10 seconds to remove it when I already had it removed. Okay, pop this bad boy in there. Sensing deja vu. Okay. This works as a big heat shield, so that's why you see me keep putting it on, because it puts pressure down on that. It's like a thick piece of paper that's got foil on it. That's going to spread that heat across that and help keep those drives cool, since those are Gen 4 high performance drives. Okay, now we're booting. So I'm back to putting myself in a corner over here. Up pretty darn fast. And this thing is whisper quiet. This little HP Mini is impressive. Another review for another day. Stay focused, Carey. Okay, if I go to the computer icon, does it see a 2 terabyte drive? It does. So I don't know what the heck that was all about. That was really weird, but it is seeing it properly. So let's run Crystal Disk Mark on it. Select the D drive, yeah. on all the tests. And while we await the results, if you have any questions for me in the chat, this would be the time to ask. Suppose I should move this screen a little to the side. This should be a little bit faster, the 1 terabyte version, strictly because of the larger capacity, nature of how SSDs work. Sergio says maybe the drive needs some firmware update. One of the things you're going to find when you buy drives from these Asian manufacturers is you're likely never going to see a firmware update. With Western Digital and Samsung and even SanDisk and AData, they're more prone to offering you firmware updates, and they have the utility to make it possible. With these companies, generally, you're never going to see a firmware. And I could be wrong, right? Because I'm not that familiar with MOVESPEED. I'm just recently learned of their existence. Maybe they're doing things differently, but I would not expect a firmware update at this price point and this performance for this much storage. I don't think there's a lot of money to pay developers. You know, they're obviously making less money on the sale of each drive than Samsung is making on the sale of each drive. And Samsung has a lot of other areas where they generate revenue. They have a lot more employees, and so they can keep people on staff to write firmware updates and code for things they've sold years ago because of the size of the company. Smaller company can't really afford to do that. So if you want that, and that's important to you, spend more money and get it from the big name brand, because I don't want you to be disappointed in your purchase. Jim KJ3N said there's a 4 terabyte version on the Walmart site that's $198. It seems very, very comparable to the Fangjing drives that I've been testing. So decide for yourself. Want to save money and not give up performance or capacity? Or do you want to spend a little bit more, get a little bit more performance, and just have that peace of mind that, you know, things like firmware updates and customer service are a known thing when it comes to Western Digital, SanDisk, or Samsung. That's a fixed thing we already know. These newer companies, and especially if they're based out of another country, often a delay. And we're asleep, they're awake, and vice versa. So you got to reach out to them. It'll be the middle of the night for them. So you won't hear back till the next day when they respond while you're sleeping. If you don't like that, stick with a manufacturer in the USA, even Oyen Digital. I just want you to fully understand the consequences potentially of the savings may be in the level of service. However, that's assuming you ever needed service. And I'm not saying the service is going to be bad. I'm not even saying the service isn't going to be equal. I'm saying I don't know when it comes to these companies what that would be. They're so inexpensive for what it's going to cost you and the time and effort to send something back. You might as well just order another one. I mean, at some point, when do you say, okay, you know, that's enough? It's just fun. But you got a 5-year warranty. Maybe it's the principle of it. And you're going to spend hours and get an envelope and postage and data tracking information to ship it wherever it needs to get shipped so they can send you back another one. I mean, you can totally do that if you want to, but the cheaper this stuff gets, the less important that becomes. Garfield Rupe with a $5 super chat contribution. Thank you, Garfield. I go through a lot of storage. So I'm not a home user. I'm going to buy one, and I won't buy one again for 4 years or 3 years. I'm buying 12 to 20 of these a month. And for some systems, I want Samsung or Western Digital. For other systems where we're trying to keep the price as low as possible, but we don't want to sacrifice performance either. For those people, I don't hesitate to use drives like Fangjing and MOVESPEED. In fact, if I was going to put together like an ASUS stored NAS, why would I put expensive Samsung drives in it? That wouldn't make any sense. Why would I put expensive Western Digital drives in it? I'd be much better off finding budget drives. And even at that, only Gen 3, because why waste money on Gen 4 if I'm putting it in any kind of an enclosure? The bottleneck is going to be the enclosure. So don't waste your money on a super fast drive if you're going to put it in an external enclosure or a NAS. Dwayne said, how does a brand new drive come already formatted? That's a great question, Dwayne. I can tell you that the drive was sent to me from the folks at MOVESPEED. And I don't know if they had sent it to somebody else and then that person returned it after the review. I don't know if they used it for something and put it back in the box and sent it to me. You saw I cut the tape on it. So it's a valid question. How was that already formatted? Very, very strange. So yes, if you were using an enclosure of any kind, I would not waste your money on a Gen 4 or Gen 5 drive. It's just a complete waste of money. The enclosures are going to be your bottleneck. So why not just buy Gen 3 and save the money? It's not going to impact the speed of the data transfer at all through it. Jim KJ3N said a quality Gen 3 NVMe is more than enough for 85 to 90% of people. A quality Gen 4 NVMe is good enough for just about anyone else, and Gen 5 is a solution looking for a problem, in my opinion. I agree with you. I don't know if I'd say 85 to 90%, maybe of home users, yeah, but not in users overall. There's your final numbers, compared to that SanDisk. I keep calling Samsung SanDisk. But in all fairness, we were talking about SanDisk and we were talking about Samsung, and it's all about storage, whether it's flash memory or M.2 NVMe storage. So forgive my word salad. But there we have it. It's a very capable drive. I can't complain at those numbers. Samsung is a little bit faster. Samsung has the Samsung Magician software. Samsung is twice as much money. But I'm not getting twice as much back. I'm not getting twice as much capacity. I'm not getting twice as much performance. And while the Samsung Magician software is nice to have, it's a luxury item. I don't have to have it. So if we're trying to keep you in a budget, but we don't want to sacrifice your performance, I would have no hesitation recommending MOVESPEED in the same way that I'm recommending the Fanjing drives. To me, it's two sides of the same coin. That's not suggesting that their customer service is going to be the same. But again, when you're talking about drives that are this inexpensive, especially if you buy it from like Amazon, where you have a 30-day return window, if it lasts beyond 30 days, it's probably going to last a really. And then after you get beyond that, if something should happen, which seems unlikely, but if it should happen and you need a warranty claim, at that point, you'll see what the customer service is like. And by the time that happens, these drives will probably be even cheaper, making it even more discouraging to spend the time and money to send it back. But it would be your right to do so under warranty if you wanted to go through that and see what their customer service is like. And if you go through any of that experience with any company, we'd love it if you share your experience with us. I know Jim in the chat had an issue with an ADATA return that he eventually gave up on. But it's a very unusual story. So we're always looking for patterns. We're not looking for something that happened to one person one time. We're looking for something that happened to multiple people so we can find a pattern. Otherwise, things do break. It's the random, chaotic nature of life. Patrick Manny says, I'm happy you got the streamer fixed quickly. Yeah, well, you and me both. I talked a bit about the, go full screen. When you work in my field, you generally have an hour to diagnose and repair a computer. That doesn't include any travel time. That's just once you're on site. And this is the reason why that exists. Customer says, how do you bill me? And almost every computer repair shop will say we bill by the hour. What's the next question? How much is it per hour? It's whatever it is, you know, $100, $125 an hour. How long do you think it's going to take you based on the problem I'm describing? Well, we don't know until we get there. You know, could be this, could be that. The next question is, can you do it in an hour? Everything is always based on that hour. So you should be able to, as a professional, you should be able to diagnose most computer problems and have them resolved within 1 hour to 90 minutes. That should be your average. If you're slower than that, you're not cut out for this line of work, at least at scale. So that's okay. I'm not cut out to play in the NBA. Way too short. I'm also a bit too old for that. But I've accepted that. That's just not my thing. And so it may not be yours. Nick Poverman said, why is it that Samsung has not come out with a 4 terabyte NVMe M.2 drive? That is a great question, Nick, and one I would like the answer to myself. Skip says you are out of focus. No, you're out of focus. You're watching the video in too low of a resolution. So by default, Windows sets the resolution to automatic. And if it's not initiated correctly, the connection, then you're going to get a lower res picture, which to you is going to look out of focus. Always be sure to hit the little gear icon in the corner of the picture and select 1080p as your resolution. See, it's very much in focus. Patrick Manning says, Carey looks fuzzy at 144p and at 240p. Yeah, for sure. Lawn Dog said, yes, almost all Gen 5 NVMe drives have heat sinks. That tells me they're probably running drives very hard, probably due to their limits. So anytime we're dealing with the fastest technology, it's going to consume more power and generate more heat. No matter how fast Gen 3 drives ever got, Gen 4 drives get hotter. No matter how hot they got. Gen 4 drives got faster and they got hotter. Gen 5 drives will be faster and hotter than Gen 4 drives. Thing is, though, when you get a motherboard, these days, they normally have heat sinks over the M.2 slots. And the heat sinks that the motherboard includes for your M.2 drives are nearly always far superior to any heatsink the drive manufacturer may offer you. Now, if your motherboard does not have heatsinks for the M.2, then you absolutely have no other choice but to use a heatsink. Ideally, you want to use the one that comes with your motherboard because it's not only going to look better, it's going to work better. It's been thoroughly tested, designed, and vetted for a Gen 5 NVMe or Gen 4, whatever M.2 slot the heatsink is covering that's included with your motherboard is far superior in nearly every case versus what the drive manufacturer may offer you. So for the aesthetic and for the money savings, use the one that comes with the motherboard. You should not have to buy a heatsink for an NVMe drive these days. Gilberto says, well, Samsung does not release a 4 terabyte version of their NVMe drives. They do have the external T7 USB SSD T7 Shield in 4 terabyte. That's true. Okay. That pretty much was what I wanted to do yesterday, was this. And in fact, I was going to split the flash drives testing to yesterday to cover that in more detail, and the NVMe drives today. So instead, I've revisited the flash drives, started that from scratch again without getting to all the same detail. Because not everybody wants that level of detail, but that video's up from yesterday if you want that. But it's a nice combination of products from MOVESPEED. Again, MOVESPEED is recommending buying the product from Walmart. We are not a Walmart affiliate. If you make a purchase from Walmart, it is not supporting this channel. I don't care. I just want to make sure you're getting a good deal and that you're happy with your purchase. You can buy these from Amazon if you want to. I think the price is a little higher at Amazon. Overall, it's a high-performing drive, half the price of the Samsung, same warranty, and regardless of what anybody says, reliability is never guaranteed. You always want to have backups regardless. The best name brand, most reliable drives still can unexpectedly fail, and for a myriad of reasons. So to me, it doesn't really matter if the drive fails. That's irrelevant. What matters is when I reach out to the company, if that scenario happens, are they quick to respond and to get me a solution? That's the most important factor. Because remember, customers are waiting on me. And if I'm turning around and I'm waiting on the manufacturer, what position does that put me in? It means, unlike you, what I have to do is give my customer I don't want to drive back and forth. So if my customer has a failed drive, regardless of who makes it, doesn't even have to be a bad drive. It could be a bad power supply, bad motherboard, bad whatever, bad RAM. What I do, because I'm a business, is I will go to my customers. I will bring a replacement part with me that is the same or equal to what they have, and I will get them back up and running again, and I will leave, and we are done. The transaction's over. When I get back, then I go online, I fill out the RMA paperwork, and then get it packed up and ship it off. And eventually, when the new one arrives, the replacement, usually it's about 2 weeks, it'll go back on my part shelf. That's pretty much, again, a major difference between how somebody would run a business versus how something you might do at home. And in this way, I can help the customer much faster. I don't have to make multiple trips back and forth, picking up the drive, then waiting for the new one to arrive, then driving over to install it. And the customer's like, what do I do in the meantime? And when are you coming back? I'll come back when the drive comes in. Well, when's the drive coming in? I don't know. I haven't sent your drive off yet. So for business reasons, which makes perfect sense if you just take 2 seconds to think about it, makes sense to simply replace it, company's cost, and then replace the one you used at company's cost with the return unit, the replacement unit the manufacturer sends, which will almost always be a brand new unit. And there you go. Does anybody have any questions for me? Otherwise, that'll likely wrap it up for today's video. I want to thank the folks over at MOVESPEED for sending us the flash drive and for sending us the NVMe drives. And yeah, I have no hesitation recommending them. I think it's a great value for the dollar, and they're using the same quality components as the big name brands as far as the actual components that make up the module. They're the same parts. MOVESPEED isn't physically making anything. So, interesting tactic. And of course, in order for MOVESPEED to compete in that marketplace, why should you buy their brand if you've never heard of them and you don't know what customer service may be like if you're going to need it, versus buying an established brand? Well, because MOVESPEED can save you a lot of money. So, at the end of the day, is it a safe thing to buy? Yes. Are they a legit company? Yes. Are they going to have good customer service? I don't know. Am I going to ever need customer service? I don't know. At some point, you have to, life isn't filled with guarantees. So if you decide to make a purchase and you want to let us know how that purchase went and what it's been like with the product, we will collect that data along with anybody else who wants to share it and see if we can establish a baseline of quality or issues. But it isn't going to happen from one unit, from one person. It's just not enough data to establish any sort of pattern or concern. So if you choose to share your experience, leaving a comment, once again, that doesn't change anything unless enough comments come in that lean heavily to one side or the other, and then it'd be deserving another look in that regard. Other than that, they're not a scam. The price is not too good to be true. It's a real product, both the flash drive and the M.2 drives. I would not hesitate to use myself. Still always want to back up your data, regardless of how reputable a company is or how well known they are. Things still happen beyond your control, from fires and floods to ransomware and viruses, accidental deletions and data corruption, power spikes. The list goes on and on. It's not always just a drive failing. When's the last time you've even had a drive fail? The quality on this stuff has gone so good over the last 20 years. It's a world of difference. You've seen me on these live videos. I don't know how many times I'm unboxing brand new product. How many times have I unboxed a product that was dead on arrival? Twice in 20 years? How long have I been doing this? 2008 to 2023, 15 years. It's happened 2-3 times. And the times it happened were years ago, not recently. Things are just, quality control is getting better. Product quality is getting better. Steve H contributes $10. He goes, thanks for the review of these drives. Well, you're very welcome. Thanks for hanging out with us today, and thanks for your contribution, Steve. And the last few minutes, if you have any other questions, I'll do my best to provide an answer. So I'm going to stick around here a couple minutes to give you time to type your question. Other than that, we will wrap it up for today. I will be live again tomorrow. And on Friday, we're going to do a best bang for the buck build with our good friend Mitch Morrison lending a hand. All shows start at 1 o'clock Pacific time. That's 4 p.m. Eastern currently. It will change in November when daylight saving time hits. However, right now, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Every Friday, guaranteed. I try and do shows throughout the week, 1 p.m. as well, depending on what my schedule allows me to do. And on Mondays, for the members who pay $9.99 a month for membership, they're helping to support this channel. They're helping to make these videos even possible. I do videos every Monday specifically for members only. It's a members only video. Only members will ever be able to watch that video. Only members can participate in the chat. So it's a much smaller turnout and it's a bit more intimate. Everybody can be heard. Nobody's voice gets lost in the crowd because it's not a big crowd. If you want to be a part of that and you want to help support the channel and keep us from making commercials for big manufacturers, well, I sure would appreciate it because I don't want to make commercials for big manufacturers. I'll leave that to the big tech YouTubers. Let them generate the revenue by making commercials. I want to keep everything real, recommend products that I recommend to my real customers in real life, no differently to you guys. And I want to do it independently, my freedom of thought, my freedom to speak my mind without worrying about losing an income stream. So through your support and your contributions, you make that possible. If you enjoy this content and you want to see more like it, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, it's free to subscribe. I do have a little icon on the screen. There it is. Yeah. So if you enjoy the content, hit the thumbs up button under the video. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to turn notifications on to be alerted anytime I post new content or I go live. You can also follow me on Facebook, on Twitter. I usually will post there as well, a notification, typically the night before. Sometimes they're more last minute, but the notifications go out through Twitter and Facebook as well. And that's how you can know. Or you can just tune in after 1 o'clock Pacific time and see if I'm live. I'm just looking for any questions. Nick Poverman says, what you're going to say to MOVESPEED about the issue you had with M.2 being seen, or is that the HP's problem? No, I'm going to ask MOVESPEED about it. That wouldn't, So the whole thing being 1 TB, that could be an HP related pickup. But already being partitioned and formatted out of the box, it's highly suspicious. So again, it's possible because it's the same model of drive. Maybe something on the HP cached. They didn't recognize we switched the drive. It'd be really weird if it does that. This is a new machine to me. So maybe there's something there. Seems really unusual that that drive, the 2 TB drive, when we plugged it in, showed it was freshly formatted as a 1 TB drive when we had just freshly formatted the version of that was 1 TB. Almost like the HP was caching it. I don't know. I will ask him about it. I want to thank everybody who has contributed during today's show. And let me just check the phone for any missed messages here before we go. Thank you for the gift card from Alan Lindos and from Paul O'Brien. And for the super chat contributions, I can find screen. Bear with me a second. Thank you to Paul O'Brien for the super chat, as well as Stan Aristoff, Rick Lakes, and Kevin Crowley. To Homo, Josiah Guernsey renewing his membership. Thank you for doing that. George Schleicha and Alvin Shaver, thanks guys for your contributions. Ben Laird and Alan Lindos, thank you for your super chat contributions. Garfield Rupe, Steve H., thank you for your super chat contributions. Patrick Manny, thank you for renewing your membership now on month 15. Right on. Thank you to all my friends in blue for being the Blue Mod crew. You guys rock. Those of you with the badges next to your name, those are our members. Thank you guys for making so much of this content possible. Contributions. And for the people in white, that means I don't recognize you yet, but if you continue to hang out with us, participate in the chat, and I start to recognize your name, I'll just turn you blue. It's just, it doesn't cost you anything. Just have to be here and be nice. And you do that on a regular basis, turn you blue. All right, guys, that'll wrap it up for me for today. Thank you to Camera Girl for the thumbnail used in today's video. And another shout out and thanks to the folks over at MOVESPEED. Hopefully they'll have some more product for us to test, because if they keep making stuff like this, more please. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all very, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.